peaceful, and affirm our collective hope for peace on this earth, sending especially energy to Ukraine, to Sudan, and all those other places in this earth that are also hoping for peace. We affirm together that these lands are the ancestral lands of the Yavapai people, the Wipukepas, the Kwevkepayas, the Tolkepayas, and the Yavapai. I bring you energy today from the Pai Pai gathering in Camp Verde that Rachel Maxwell kindly said I didn't need to come to the meetings yesterday. And so I took off with my pastor friend from Trinity Presbyterian, and we went to Camp Verde and we watched the bird dancing of the Yavapai and the incredible, incredible deer dancing, and the dancing of these different groups, the one in the Havasupai. So I am full of that energy, and I hope I can send that out to you in this service. Now let us listen to our gathering music, which is Yavapai Song and Dance at Montezuma Castle, a place we went on Friday together to study the history of these people. Let us listen and watch.
Good morning and welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Prescott. I'm obviously not Brownin, as it says in a little goof up happened. I'm Lydia Garrett, and a longtime UU and member of this church, but Brownin is there, and we are figured out to do this together. So we extend a warm welcome to all of you, and we are glad that you were able to join us in person. More and more people show up. This is great. So, and take care of yourself. We hope you're in good health and stay that way. So, this is a mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate, spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Please join us after the service for coffee and socializing in small groups in Davis Hall across from here. And for those, do we still have people on Zoom? Well, anyway, if we have people on Zoom, please join us for the breakout rooms. If you're joining us for the first time, please check out our website at prescottuu.org for more information about us. And if you're here in person, there will be time to introduce yourself at the end of the service. And then please stay and chat with a member or two or three or four. We want to thank our pianist, Lena Human, and our choir director, Mary Lou Prince. And of course, our choir, and also our Sunday morning volunteers. And now please take a moment to put your phones in silent mode. We'll remind you to put it back afterwards. Okay.
We are having internet problems today, so we suggest you put your phones on airplane mode or turn them off completely so that you're not dragging on the internet. We have people on Zoom, but it is a weak connection this morning. So for them, please weaken your own signal for a moment. Thank you.
Turn it on into
Put it-
airplane or
yeah.
off?
Put it in airplane mode or just turn it off.
All right. In addition to announcements that were showing on a screen before the service, you can read about other things happening at GPUUC this week in a weekly peak newsletter on our website and in Reverend Patty's videos. And we have some printed copies of the announcements out on the welcome table. Sandra Palacios, our faith development coordinator, is teaching ages 5 and older across the street in the faith development building. So, okay. We begin our service in a Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Lila White. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage and gratitude for this beloved community.
Today's chalice reading was taken from the 1450 Constitution of the Five Nations, otherwise known as the Iroquois Great Law of Peace. It established a democracy between 5 Iroquois-speaking tribes. Quote, "Look and listen to the welfare of the whole people, and have always in view not only the present, but also the coming generations, even those whose faces are yet beneath the surface of the earth, the unborn of the future nation."
Good morning. Oh. This morning, the special place that I lift up on this earth, that I invite you to as we open our gathering, is Montezuma Well. How many of you have been there? Ooh, lots of people have been there. This is the place where the Yavapai people emerged onto the earth as we know it. At first, they lived in the underworld and everything was going well until there was a drought all over the land. Finally, knowing that this drought would eventually kill them, they asked a hummingbird, because these were times when hummingbirds could speak with humans and coyotes could speak with hummingbirds. And they asked that hummingbird, which in Yavapai language is mina mina, they said, "Help us." And the hummingbird flew all around and she found a hole in the sky. It was above a huge, huge tree. One of the top branches of that tree was piercing the sky, and the mina mina was able to fly up through the hole to another land. And she said to all the people, "Come with me to that land." And they all climbed up the tree into the land. And the animals came with them, all except for the frogs who stayed behind. So after they were in that beautiful new land that had fertile, beautiful fields that they could cultivate, a flood began to happen coming up through that hole, and the land began to fill with water. And everyone knew in a moment what had happened. It was the revenge of the frogs who had been left behind. And they knew that everyone would die from this flood, that there would be no way to escape it, because there was no giant tree in the middle of that land to climb up. So they took a log and they hollowed it out, and a woman went inside that log, and they gave her food for a long time and birds. Isn't that wonderful? She took birds with her to that land. And for a very long time after they had closed up the log like a boat, she traveled on that log in the midst of waters. You can imagine hearing those waters around her, and then finally she hit something. And then she got out. And that was because she had hit those tall mountains that the flood could not go over. And she survived as the mother of the Yavapai people. I bring that story to you in this space that will become part of the song that we have just written. That story of emerging from the earth. What would it be if you thought that you had emerged from this place? And yet, in this sanctuary, we bring so much love. So we gather that love for Watson Lake, Lynx Lake with that eagle, Granite Mountain that gave us the name of our congregation, Mingus Mountain, the Manzanita, the Ponderosa Pines, the deer and the javelina, the mountain lions and bobcats, the sky and its clouds. The sky and its clouds. All of these places and plants were beloved of the Yavapai people. This is the land they emerged into. Let us emerge. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we will sing together. Come, come, whoever you are. It's number 188 in your hymnals. did it. I can't help but remember the first time I gave a sermon from this pulpit, and I had you sing songs, and I learned that you hate rounds, and you just stood and looked at me like, ugh. She doesn't know us yet. But we can learn rounds. Let us say together the words of our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now let us listen again to the sound of this bowl. And I invite you to feel your feet on this earth from which the Yavapai people and many other peoples throughout this earth emerged from this place, from many places throughout the earth. Let us feel this top layer. And if we have walked down the Grand Canyon, we can understand that there are so many layers beneath us, older and older rocks. And then we come to that place where rocks are being made, that place of heat, that place that pushes up in volcanoes, that creates earthquakes and tsunamis, that place of transformation and change within the earth, all the way down to that fiery core. And then above us, that sky, that blue we only find in this state, I believe. That blue that is filled with clouds, that can be the shape of dragons and bears and angels and watermelons and all kinds of shapes that we can find. This is the earth that surrounds us. And each of us coming into this place, into this community, each of us carries our own joys and sorrows. We still carry the joy of hosting a drag show that had no other home last week. That was a wonderful time. We hold Frank and Nancy Beeson, who are trying to discover what is happening. We hold Deb and Dick Walter. And I invite you to say the names. We hold Susan Cooper, who is that combination of joy and sorrow of a beautiful death of her mother, a beautiful gathering of her family, and yet there is sorrow. And the happiness of Bonnie Fort celebrating the 103rd birthday of her father this week. And Karen Anderson, again, a beautiful death of her mother who was over 100. Isn't that right? No, 98. A beautiful death, and yet there is sadness. What are the other names we are holding in this space? Paul Bartelson. Oh yes, Rhea Batterman, she was our worship associate last week, and her neck is so painful this week, she is home. Jacqueline Schaefer. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen Schaefer. Kathleen Schaefer, who is mourning the death of her husband. And she's in San Diego for the memorial service this week. Any other? Kelsey and Jeffrey Wilkes. And Jeffrey's doing well, I hear. But yes, we continue to hold them. Oh, and Kelsey's having surgery tomorrow. Any others? Mary Helen Ewing, who has been battling with pneumonia this week. Yes. Oh, I love the joy. Sophia Dominguez, who is having her birthday this week and is awaiting her parents, the arrival of loved ones. Yvonne Garrett. Okay, Yvonne Garrett, who is Lydia's daughter, who is in seminary and just won a scholarship and is celebrating a birthday in Manhattan. Her 59th. Ooh, that's a good birthday. Any other names we would like to lift up? We lift up in joy the visit of Rachel Maxwell, who is helping us understand a new perspective on this building and a new chapter emerging, however it may emerge in this congregation. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I heard something. Oh. Oh. Yes, the joy that is felt with Peter West, who is connecting with Andrew, his brother, and his mother Norma. And those are beautiful times when families who have felt some separation are speaking to one another and sharing in being a family. Any others? So let us hold all of those things and this earth that shelters us and that is in such danger. This earth we love so much, let us hold it. And now I invite you into a time of meditation during which we will have music, and I invite you to come up and put a pebble, or there's some marbles as well, into one of the bowls, and to think about that connection that we have as a community. Please join me in a song that is a prayer. Let us sing together, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Oh, in the wind, rise in the sea. You in my hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots Holy Ghost, will set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale mi compasión. Sopla al volar, sube la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arráigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
As we prepare to take the offering this morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather here each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. This month's recipient is the Step Up for Kids mission. Please read more about them in your order of service. To give online, do we have connection? The link is available in the chat, or you can also go to the website. Please enjoy now the offertory music. This is a ringing morning. acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through this offering. What is given in love is received in gratitude. Blessed be.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a wonderful book. I hope you take notes. It is called The Survival of the Yavapai by Frieda Ann Eswonia. And in her book, I've come to know her actually, and she is coming on May 8th at 2 p.m. at Trinity Presbyterian Church to tell us stories of the Yavapai. And when I went to see her in her home in Clarkdale, I asked her about the most important aspects of the Yavapai people. And she told me one, which I told you in the beginning, and that is that they emerged from this land. The second story she talked about was the Trail of Tears of the Yavapai people that was experienced by her great-grandmother in February of 1875, when 3,000 indigenous people, including Yavapai people, were rounded up in the Verde Valley, that beautiful valley that had been promised as a homeland, and driven across. So February, think February, they were driven across snow-covered mountains and freezing rivers. They went on foot. Her great-grandmother wrote that many people had moccasins that they would give to others who were in a more difficult situation. Some accounts record that around half of the people died on that journey. These are Frieda Ann's great-grandmother's words. We were many moons on that trip. We had to walk all the way. The soldiers had ponies to ride. There were no roads and very few trails. A lot of the Indians did not have moccasins, but those who did gave them to others who needed them more. However, even the moccasins were worn out by the sharp rocks. Our clothing was torn to rags on the brush and cactus. With bleeding feet, weary in body and sick at heart, many wanted to die. Many of the people did die. Rations were meager. It was winter time. At night, we huddled together around campfires to keep warm. Cold and hungry, we did our best to get a little rest. Many a loved one was left along the way, either dead or dying, their bodies to be eaten by wild animals. It was a pitiful sight. And we still had a long way to go. We would leave more dead and dying along the way. That was 1875. In 1878, only 3 years after this Trail of Tears from the Verde Valley to the San Carlos Apache Reservation, which has the Apache and the Yavapai have no deep connection. They have been occupying similar lands, but the Apache's story is of migrating into the land. The Apaches speak the Athapascan language. The Yavapai speak a Yuman language, which is like maybe as different as Finnish is from Italian. Very different. So 3 years after that Trail of Tears, when these many Yavapai people were living in that San Carlos reservation, a child was born whose name was Sikatuva, born quickly. I have a brother who could have been named Born Quickly. She was named Born Quickly by her parents, Huha, singing cricket, and Kahavasua, turquoise bead in the nose. She chose June 15th as her birth date in that year of 1878. She took the name Viola and her stepfather's last name, Pelham. She took those names when she attended the Rice Indian School and the Phoenix Indian School, another trail of tears of almost all, I'm sure, of the indigenous people of this country and of also Mexico and Canada, the residential schools where many were taken. And Viola grew. And she married a man named Sam Red Ants Jamula, who was chief of the Yavapai. She married him in 1901 and came to Prescott. She had 5 daughters. And upon the death of her husband in 1940, think 1940, the beginnings of World War II, Viola became chiefess of the Yavapai tribe. She said this, "I had to help my people in whatever they needed." Her firm but benevolent rule brought new industry and dignity to her tribe. I imagine that she often said to God that she believed in and to that universe, up to that starry sky, "How can I lead my people?" This is the first performance of a song we wrote, Mary Lou and I wrote, dedicated to her. We are of this land. I want you to listen in this song for the creation story I recounted at the beginning of this service, and the story of the Trail of Tears, and listen for Viola's determination to be the leader her people needed. We are of this land. As some of you know, this is one song of a cycle of songs that keeps growing, of women of courage that we will be singing in Chicago this summer at the Parliament of World Religions. So some of you singers, that makes you want to come to Chicago, please do. But I have felt that energy of my ancestors' song is one of the songs we will be singing. But I've just felt the gathering of that energy, and I thought so much of Viola Jamula and her wondering, how can I lead this people? And if I were to ask this question of you, of myself with you, I think that this, that one, for me, one very important direction I want to lead you is deeper into the understanding of the indigenous people who occupied this land for centuries, who hold this land sacred and hold their stories. So in this book by Frieda Ann Eswonia, in her memoir, Survival of the Yavapai, I think that's a marvelous title for her memoir. One of the first photographs in that memoir is of her grandmother. In Yavapai, her grandmother is Moda. Her grandmother's name was Thala Charlie, but she always calls her Moda in her book. She only spoke Yavapai language, which was incredibly lucky for Frieda Ann. She knows that it is because of this that she became a speaker of Yavapai, and it is her mission to bring this language, and we are going to be bringing her here for Yavapai language workshops, so stay tuned. But when Frieda Ann and her 10 siblings lost their mother, Frieda was only 6 years old, and her Moda took them all in her small house in Clarkdale, that little community that is just at the foot of Jerome. In the winter, Frieda Ann tells us, her Moda told them stories, special stories, stories that are called the coyote stories. These stories were passed from grandmother to child over and over again within the Yavapai culture for thousands of years in Yavapai words. The legacy that Frieda Ann, now in her 80s, wants to leave is this language and these stories that her grandmother told her. At night, in the cold of winter, all of those children in Moda's small house in the Indian section of Clarkdale, they would gather around their grandmother Moda, and they would get on her bed. I wonder how 12 people did that. But it would be warmer. And they were all cuddled and warm together and listening. Long, long ago, she began, when animals could communicate with each other and with humans. The monsoon rains came, as they still come here, and flood the washes with water. And the children sat back, and they remembered that time when it was not winter, when the sun was hot and the rain made dangerous streams. In that time of the rain, Gafad Laha, the coyote, said to the other animals, and that those streams became like rushing rivers. He said to them, "The waters are running high, and it will not be easy for you to get safely across the river. The only thing for you to do is to let me swim, carrying you across one at a time." Although the other animals did not totally believe him and were somewhat afraid, I love this, Their desire to cross the river overcame their better judgment, fears and inhibitions, so they believed that Gathadlaha would do what he said he would do. And when it came time for each of them to cross the water, he gave them the news. If you crawl inside my body, you will stay warm and dry until we get to the other side, where I will let you get out and you can join the others that are there or will soon be going over. Well, I guess the other side was really far away and people couldn't see that the animals were actually not getting out of Gathadlaha. And he got away with that deception until one particular animal asked him for a ride across the water, and the coyote agreed. And the animal crawled inside the coyote's body, and he could feel the coyote swimming across that strong river until they got to the other side. However, this animal was not ready to be eaten. He pulled out his quills, he popped them out, he poked the coyote, and the coyote died. You guessed it, Moda would say, the animal was a porcupine. This story stayed with those children who sat around Moda. When they moved away and they were separated from her, soon they moved to Prescott. And in that part of the story, you will find how diverse Prescott was at that time, all of the different sections of different people. But when they moved away, they took that wisdom of that story. When someone offered them an easy way to overcome something that seemed impossible, they could hear Coyote's voice saying to the animals afraid to cross the swollen river, if you crawl inside my body, you will stay warm and dry until we reach the other side. And if they thought of that wisdom, they hesitated. And they thought, maybe this person who is giving me an easy way out of this problem is going to put me in a worse situation. And I wonder if they made the mistake, as all of us have done, of following someone who wanted to do something bad to them or involve them in something bad, think teen years. If they were trapped like the porcupine, they could think this, is there something unique that I could do to get out? What is my superpower? That porcupine had quills, and I have, well, I could tell you what I have. I have an incredible scream that goes from the base. It sounds very impressive. I have gotten out of several terrible situations that I will not tell you from this pulpit. But this story empowers us to find our superpowers, and it gives the child a sense that there is a way out, even if they make that first mistake. And they think back, I knew he was lying. Even if they make that first mistake of believing that coyote and following him, I believe this is a story that says, you might make a bad choice and you have a way to get out. The wisdom of the story, though, that I want to leave with you is the wisdom of the scene that Moda sets at the beginning, of a land populated by humans and animals who communicated with each other. Modern science is proving the complexity of the communications that happen in the forest among trees. Indigenous scientists such as Robin Wall Kimmerer offer us this old wisdom of this reciprocity, this communication in the natural world as a way to approach those huge dangers ahead of us that are happening because of climate change. Listen to the natural world, she tells her students. The natural world is our teacher. The trees are our teacher. I wonder if you have ever sat outside as I did yesterday at the Pai Pai gathering in Camp Verde, and all of a sudden, I could hear birds, lots of birds. They had been singing all along, but I hadn't noticed them. I needed to have my ears tuning to them. We fill our minds, and I'm using the word we. I feel all of us humans do this, except perhaps Thich Nhat Hanh, and he died. But we fill our minds with so much that gets in the way of the messages of the animals and humans around us. I wonder, what is there for us in each moment for us to hear, for us to see? On Friday in our Yavapai history tour, we opened our eyes to what was around us, and there it was, a vermilion flycatcher. People travel hundreds of miles, birders do, to see such a bird. And all we had to do was look over and go, oh, there's a red spot in that tree. And then it flew near us and flew up right in a branch we could see. Such a bright red flitting across the sky, a bird singing its song. And we opened our ears and our eyes to that wisdom that could have gone right by us. That wisdom that may have been saying, and each of us could translate this wisdom in different ways. To me, it was saying, stretch your wings. Be as beautiful as you are. Birds are not shy. Don't be afraid to shine, that vermilion flycatcher was saying. In our association and in the world, there is so much talk of reconciliation and restitution, as if we begin to think that these are pie in the sky ideals that someone out there will finally have a good idea for. And there are wonderful ideas happening. And I believe that these concepts and these ideas are always alive around us. I believe we are doing this work when we spend time understanding the history and cultures that our ancestors, I'm talking, because my pioneer ancestors were at almost every awful event. It's true, they were at the Mayflower. My great, great, great grandmother, whose name I bear, of whom I am so proud, she delivered 3,977 babies in her lifetime, with only 2 difficult births. She fed the soldiers on the way to the Bear River massacre of the Northwest Band of the Shoshone. That was one of the worst massacres in history. And I came to know the storyteller of the Northwest Band of Shoshone, whose name is Patty Timbimbu Madsen. And we became friends. And the work that I wrote for my ancestors supports her Shoshone language program in Utah. There are connections with all of us into that world of restitution and reconciliation. I believe we are practicing this when we learn that these cultures are surviving. And then we think, what might I do? A beginning might be buying the books of Frieda Ann Eswonia, not borrowing them from the library, but getting them. I don't like Amazon, but get them on Amazon because that's where you can get them. Because this supports Frieda Ann's life, who is dedicating herself to teaching that history and telling these important stories. I also think we are doing that when we find wisdom for ourselves in those stories. And we spread that wisdom. We are in a gathering and we say, that sounds like that Wile E. Coyote story. Sounds like you're asking me to take a ride inside. We do this when we are honoring Yavapai culture by looking for that Wile E. Coyote around us and by knowing when you might practice what that porcupine did, that you might find your own superpower to get away from that coyote. And I believe at the heart of this work is the advice of Robin Wall Kimmerer. Pay attention, she says, which is often the message I receive from Granite Mountain. Paying attention, she says, is reciprocity with the living world. It is making that world live again, that world in which animals could talk with each other and with the humans, when the natural world was alive with wisdom. May we as a community strive to deepen our knowledge of the layers of history of this land that we love. May we walk gently on it with new eyes that understand that history. May we open our eyes and ears to those ancient stories that bid us see the time when humans and the natural world could communicate with each other. They are here if we but open ourselves to that world. I wonder what birds are singing that we might hear. Amen, and may it be so. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit and let us sing together. This is my song. This song is about the love of place and country that all people have. Let us sing. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. Their hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and vine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. This is my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. I close today with the words of Frieda Ann Eswonia. who I had a conversation with and a prayer with before I started teaching the class that is on Wednesdays at 2 about her life and about these stories. And I asked her, I said, Frieda Ann, what would you like me to tell people who are studying your life? She said, tell them that there are so many hard things that happen in life, but don't bear a grudge. Don't bear a grudge. So let us not bear grudges for her, who at more than 80 now has many, many reasons to bear grudges and has opened her heart to me. And I'm very grateful for that. And now let us say the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And we say goodbye. Thank you. We say goodbye to you on Zoom and promise we're going to work hard to create a better Zoom experience for you next week by strengthening our internet. And then I invite you to go into your breakout rooms. And I invite you who were brave enough to come to this sanctuary. You have my heartfelt thanks for doing that. I know this has been sometimes hard to get out of our houses and come to our building.